this is Lauren talking with Mr. Penders, the archaeologist. So please tell me about how does such a modern idea as space exploration go in hand with archaeology?
Well, actually, space exploration and archaeology do go hand in hand. I've actually been doing some aerospace archaeology, as I call it. It's sort of a spin-off of aviation archaeology. We've actually found a Jupiter missile crash site out here from the 1950s that we went out and did an archaeological survey on, and we were able to find out which one it was, when it launched, why it crashed, and of course where it crashed. And there was no written record or any other kind of documentation here at the Cape. So based on what the knowledge that we know of the different launches, etc., and the position, the location, and the debris field that was there, we were able to determine exactly the history and how this missile came to be there. And the 30-foot crater sort of helped as well, which is still intact. And archaeology actually reaps a lot of benefits from the space program. Global positioning systems. When I first started in archaeology back in the dark ages of the 1980s, we didn't have GPS. Everything was tape measure. In some cases, you had an aerial photograph and you just drew dots on there, and then you hoped you got it right. So when you had to come back and do additional exploration, you could find the site again. Now, you're out there with a GPS, and when I first started using GPS, you had a big backpack. Now it's gotten to the point where I have GPS in my smartphone, so I can record exactly where I'm at. Let's see, LiDAR. I use that to find archaeological sites. The colored imagery that comes out, I can see where a possible site was. You can see outlines of old house sites from the early 1900s, 1920s. You can find where middens are based on the coloration. So I've reaped a lot of benefits from archaeology. Ground penetrating radar is another example. We just had a survey completed of the cemeteries out here trying to find the unmarked graves that are in these locations. So the technology developed from the space program has been of a great help to archaeology.
Wow, that's amazing. So also I read about how you've excavated ancient artifacts on some of the launch sites. Can you tell me a bit more about these?
Well, that goes back to the Jupiter missile crash site. Mainly what I do on the launch complexes is I'm trying to preserve the history of the launch complexes. They're deteriorating rapidly because of the environment that we're in. We're in one of the most corrosive environments in the world with the salt water coastal region that we're in, and these launch complexes were not built to last. They were actually built just for the program that they were involved with, like Mercury or Jupiter or the Atlas program. There was no thought in mind of ever using them again. So one of my jobs is to try to preserve them through different means and getting back to technology using high definition 3D laser scanning of the launch complexes to preserve them.
And that goes in hand with one of my other questions, that do you preserve launch sites? Obviously, yes. And is there a plan for their preservation?
Yes, there is. I have a 10-year plan to try to rectify what they call demolition by neglect. In other words, they have been abandoned for so long, they're falling apart. And they're falling down, they're corroding. So I have a program in place to document the history of the launch complexes, first of all, using 3D high-definition laser scanning, as well as historical research and documents, preserving photographs, the as-built drawings, and as well as a program to start systematically restoring them or stabilizing them. Obviously, this is not space world. We have a mission here. The Air Force has a mission here, but the idea is to preserve them in place the best we can, and that involves stabilization, getting rid of the corrosion, using I-beams to support structures, painting, cleaning. One of the big things out here is we have invasive plant species like Brazilian pepper that will take over a launch complex. Well, one of the first things we do is get rid of the Brazilian pepper.
All right, thank you. And how do you feel the science of STEM learning interacts with the field of archaeology? And are you familiar with STEM?
Well, I am now from you telling me what it is, but I think it's great. I think the more awareness we can have of cultural resources, the better. It's our heritage. It belongs to everybody, especially on national parks or federal land. It belongs to the people of the United States. So I think anytime that we can get the word out that history is not just what's taught in school, we have 12 to 15 to 20,000 years of history in the United States here, from the earliest natives coming over from the Bering Land Bridge or wherever into what's now the United States, all the way up to the 1950s Cold War. You know, that's all out there, and any time that you can teach and pass that knowledge on is great.
I couldn't agree more. And one last question, this is more of a personal question.
Yeah.
Do you have interns?
No, I do not. I wish I did. I'm a one-man show here for 2 bases and 2 annexes. So yes, I'm overworked. I could use an intern.
I volunteer!
Let me see. Oh,
Shovel bums.
yeah, so that's one thing you gotta understand. It's really hard, labor-intensive work, and you're always under the gun to get it done fast. Because most of it is private sector. They're going to build a shopping center or housing development or something similar, and time is money, because this company who's building this has already taken money out, a loan, a couple $1 million loan, so they're having to make those loan payments. So every time you delay the project, every day it's delayed, is literally costing them money. So you're always under the gun because of that, and then your employer is trying to maximize his profits by getting it done quick.
Right.
So that's what the private sector is. A lot of the cultural resource management firms being a shovel bomb. Academia, like here, I'm under time constraints. For example, if there's a program coming in and they need access to a launch complex and they need it fast, then it's like, hurry up. And so usually it's hurry up and wait, you know. So that's one thing. Here, it's a little bit more relaxed than, say, in the private sector. And in academia, you know, if you go on to get your PhD, you know, remember you're supposed to bring in grants, you know, grant money in. You're going to have your own private research, but then you have students that you can use and abuse and have them do the work for you. So remember that.
Okay.
But so there's private sector. I mean, you could go work for the DoD. You have an in with that. The Park Service hires a lot of archaeologists. The Forestry Service hires a lot of archaeologists. I think the DoD's or the Park Service, one of the two, are the largest employers of archaeologists, cultural resource types. There's private companies, state government agencies. Then there's a private sector consulting firms will hire you. So that's what your choices are. You may want to go in the cultural anthropologist, but cultural anthropology rather, but you don't do that. I'm biased, so.
Okay.
I can understand.
Yeah.
But if you do you like mysteries?
Yes.
Then you'll love archaeology.
Okay, that's definitely kind of the things I'm interested in, so it's good to be reassured about that from you, from a professional.
But yeah, if you like mysteries, a lot of the archaeologists I know love mysteries and read them voraciously. Because basically what you have to do is, you have to take this and you have to tell a story. Okay, what type of pottery is this? What part of the vessel is it? Now what I do is, with these ceramics, here in this area, there's check stamp pottery, that's St. John's check stamp pottery. There's St. John's plain, which has a chalky feel to it. And then there's sand temper plain, which has a sandy feel to it. And then there's sandy St. John's, just to make it more confusing. And the way you tell the difference is, you break a piece off the pot, and then you look at it under the microscope, and you look for something called sponge spicules. They look like little hairs. And so you look at the frequency of the crystals, the quartz crystals, and the sand and the fibers, and that'll tell you whether it's St. John's plain, sandy St. John's, or sand temper plain.
Okay.
So then what you do is you look at the ratios of the different type of ceramics, and that should be able to tell you something. So if you have all check stamp pottery, then you know it's a Malabar 2 period site. If you have a mix, it may be Malabar 1 and Malabar 2 period. But just to throw a ringer in it, we always thought check stamp pottery in this area was an indicator of Malabar 2 period, which is around 750 AD to European contact.
Right.
What we're finding now is when we take carbon-14 dates samples, and the dates are coming back, that there's sites with no check stamp pottery, all plain pottery. So now it's looking like check stamp pottery wasn't that important here in this area.
Oh.
But we didn't know that 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So just assume, don't be afraid to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wrong every day. In fact, my wife will tell you I'm wrong all the time, right? The thing is, you're going to be wrong because 50 years ago, we know a lot we learned from those archaeological excavations is now wrong. Because when they did things differently, they didn't have the technology they have now. They didn't think animal bone was that important, so everything was put through quarter-inch screens. Or now we take column samples and it gets through real fine mesh screens, and we pick out every little animal bone, and we look at ratios of different animals so we know what they ate. And for example, there's a site I'm doing on the weekends over by Fox Lake where it looks like they went there once a year or part of the year, and they ate turtles like nobody's business. That was like the main focus of what they were eating. They were just harvesting huge volumes of numbers of turtles to eat, as opposed to deer and mammal. You would think living in this forest area on the lake, it would be fish and deer and raccoon and possum and those mammals, but no, turtle was what's for dinner.
Wow.
Wow.